The Tour de France is the oldest Grand Tour on the calendar and remains the biggest prize in stage racing. This year is the 105th running of the event and has attracted almost all of the top stage race talent in the peloton. The winner will have to master the cobbles, time trials and mountains along the way. Whittling down the list to just 10 proved a big challenge, but here are Cycling News' 10 riders to watch for the 2018 Tour de France. Chris Froome comes into the Tour de France with a cloud hanging over his head as his salbutamol case rumbles on with no end in sight. He will look to put this to the back of his mind, just as he did at the Giro d'Italia, in search of a record-equalling 5th Tour title. Froome hasn't raced since his overall win at the Giro d'Italia, opting to spend his time training at altitude and reconning some of the Tour's stages. If Froome can win this July, he'll equal Eddie Merckx's record of 4 consecutive Grand Tours. With Thibaut Pinot not racing and Warren Barguil floundering at the moment, Romain Bardet will shoulder the hopes of the home nation. Bardet came good in his Grand Tour promise in 2016, was second at that year's Tour and backed it up with 3rd overall last season, although it was by the skin of his teeth. This season, Bardet has notched up a win at the Classic Sud Ardèche and his first monument podium at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He used the Criterium de Dauphiné as his final preparation race for this summer and finished 3rd overall with a typically aggressive ride. Richie Porte will be hoping that it's 3rd time lucky for him at this year's Tour de France after bad luck scuppered his last 2 bids. After spending many years playing the support role, Porte got his first chance to lead the team at the Tour in 2016. He got off on the wrong foot, losing time in the opening week, but chipped away in the mountains to finish 5th. His 2017 attempt ended early with a huge crash. Porte showed that he's in good form heading into this year's race, winning the Tour de Suisse in an assured fashion. After plenty of deliberation, Tom Dumoulin has decided to ride the Tour de France following his 2nd place at the Giro d'Italia. Dumoulin said that he'll be hunting the overall classification for the first time at the Tour. It will also be the first time that he's targeted the GC at 2 Grand Tours in the same season. Like Froome, Dumoulin's kept away from the racing in June, making just 1 appearance at the climb event at the Hammer Series before enjoying a lengthy break from the bike. When Vincenzo Nibali chose to ride the Giro d'Italia last year, it was on the proviso that he would ride this season's Tour. The 2014 champion comes to the event with a strong support network that includes the Izagirre brothers and Domenico Pozzovivo, who finished 5th at the Giro d'Italia. Nibali has 1 victory so far this season, following a dramatic breakaway at Milan-San Remo. His recent ride at the Criterium de Dauphiné was disappointing, but he says that he's not concerned and there's plenty of time for him to get into top shape for July. Nairo Quintana is one of 3 leaders for the Movistar team at this year's Tour de France, and the Colombian will have to prove himself against his teammates as well as his rivals. After enduring a difficult summer in 2017, Quintana looks to be back to something close to his best. His first win of the season came on stage 7 of the Tour de Suisse, but he's been hugely consistent throughout, with 5th overall at the Vuelta a País Vasco, his worst GC result. The Tour de France is the only Grand Tour missing from Quintana's list. After Simon took the reins at the Giro, the focus of Mitchelton Scott now turns to Adam Yates for the forthcoming Tour de France. The full burden of pressure will be on the 25-year-old after the team made the surprise decision not to select sprinter Caleb Ewan for the 8-man lineup. The team cited Ewan's performance as the reason, but rumours that he would leave the team possibly played a factor. Yates enjoyed his breakthrough result at the Tour in 2016 when he took 4th and the Young Riders classification. He finished 2nd at the recent Dauphiné. Mikel Landa left Team Sky to give himself more opportunities, but placed himself into another inter-team general classification battle. The difference with this one is that Landa has a real chance to break through and become the sole remaining leader by the end of the race. Despite having to sit up and wait for Chris Froome on a couple of occasions, Landa finished just 1 second off the podium last year. He proved a good counterpunch for Quintana at the Tour de Suisse, but his time trial let him down, and he'll have to hope that he can turn that around in July. After flying under the radar slightly at the start of last year's Tour, Rigoberto Urán comes to this year's race with plenty more expectation. Urán won a stage despite suffering a mechanical that prevented him from shifting gear and went on to finish 2nd overall. The result was his 3rd Grand Tour podium after 2 consecutive runner-up performances at the Giro d'Italia. Urán used the Tour de Slovenia as his preparation for the Tour, winning a stage and finishing 2nd overall. Ilnur Zakarin will be leading Katusha Alpesen's general classification hopes at the Tour, while Marcel Kittel will be hunting stage wins in the sprints. Kittel's presence will likely take the spotlight off the Russian, but he should not be underestimated. Zakarin jumped onto the scene with a stage win at the 2015 Giro d'Italia and looked set for a top 5 the following year before a crash in the final week forced him to abandon. Last year, he made up for that with 5th at the Giro and then 3rd at the Vuelta. He finished a relatively quiet 10th at the recent Dauphiné.